Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to my channel, Tarot by Bronx. This is Tarot Talk. These are Tarot Tings, and I'm your host, Boogie. Boogie. Boogie down Bronx. And we are here with a very special video. Well, it's not even video. It's like a podcast. So this is like my own radio show for real. So we're doing something very special today. I am going to be inviting my mom, who is a projector. My mom is a projector with inner authority or mental authority. So she doesn't have any like defined, like from the head, ajna, and throat, there's no definition. So that's a projector with like mental authority. So very rare, but yeah, I just decided today I wanted to invite her to share some experiences that she's had as a projector. We were just talking, and I was like, you know what? People would love to hear your story. People would love to hear the experiences you've had because ever since I introduced her to human design, she was just very receptive to reflecting on her life and seeing where these stories have shaped her and how they can apply to you all and just help you to know how to follow your strategy and ways in which she's went against her own strategy and it's flopped badly. But she was also able to recover in many ways and she's learned some valuable lessons. So we're going to really start it off with like, she's going to give different examples of ways in which she's tried to initiate from the mind in relationships, personal, and in career slash moving. So, yeah, I'm gonna open up the floor to, we're gonna call her Mama E, and yeah, so she's gonna tell some of her stories.
Hello, everyone. And I just want to say, first of all, thank you to Bronx for allowing me to come on and share some of my life experiences, some stories that, I've told her over the years that we have discussed in depth, and now learning more about the projector, human design, and how that has actually played a role, in my life, which I had no idea about. It's really, helping me with also moving forward as well.
Okay. So, my first question for you, Mom, is can you think of one or even a few examples of when you, as a projector, tried to initiate a relationship with somebody and didn't work, or how you felt like it was an issue in the past when you tried to force something to happen or you tried to push yourself into a scenario? What did that look like for you?
Sure. Yes, I do. So one of the biggest examples, or things that I've had happen where I can look back on and say, I wish I would have waited for the invitation was when I was working in a job, and that job was relocating several people and areas of the company to another state. And initially, I was interested in going, but my department that I worked in wasn't moving their employees at that time. So I had, friends of mine that had moved already to this other state with the company. And when I came to visit, I absolutely loved this state, and I wanted to move as well. However, the particular job that I was in at the time was not moving. And so I took it upon myself to look for another position which was within the same company, and I went for it, interviewed, got the job, and they were relocating. However, I didn't take into consideration the interest that I would possibly have in that role. I didn't think about anything else except I wanted to move. So with that, I just jumped in. I moved into this role and I absolutely did not like it at all. It was in accounting. It was crunching numbers. That wasn't something that I was ever interested in or wanted to do. And so I did it just because I wanted to move and that department was moving. And so ultimately I did wind up relocating to that state with that department. But the thing was, the job that I was in previously, a few months later, also decided that they were going to start relocating people. And if I would have just stayed there, I would have actually relocated with a department that I actually enjoyed the job I was doing. I wouldn't have been miserable in that other role for several months and then having to look for a different position yet again because I was not happy in that role, even though I had relocated to the new state and I loved the state. Ultimately, it would have happened. I would have got the invite to move and it would have been an easier transition. So that is one of the major things that I can look back on in my life and say that if I had waited for the invite, it would have still happened and I wouldn't have had to go through some of the hard times that I did in that position that I did not enjoy at all.
Right. And also, like in my projector video, we talked about how anytime you're not getting an invitation that you really want, it usually means that you're not ready for the upgrade yet. You're not ready to take it to the next level, or there's more that you need to learn from that situation. You need to learn more of the skills, something along those lines. And usually the invite comes fairly quickly after you're ready for the progression. So, projectors, just take into consideration that anytime you haven't gotten the invite yet, you really want to, it just means that there's something that you're still meant to learn or master, some type of lesson to learn, or you just have to really trust the process. Like, a lot of projectors want to keep up with the other types in transitioning and like moving fast and quickly, but you guys have to remember you don't have the sacral energy like generators do. So pushing yourself too hard, working too fast, moving too fast is not good for you. Projectors are supposed to work slowly, diligently, and more effectively versus like just fast, like the tortoise and the hare type of thing. You're doing slower moving pace, but more. It's better. Slower can be better. So, now, is there another example that you can think of with like a personal example, like just like simple everyday invitations, like whether there was invitations that you wanted to accept and you didn't, or there's invitations that you accepted and you shouldn't have. Can you give us some examples of that?
Yes. So I mean, in life in general, there are going to be, different opportunities that, come your way. And some you might think are great and some, you might be hesitant about. I've had a lot of of jobs, and within those different jobs that I've had, sometimes I didn't, enjoy them, or I didn't know what path I wanted to go. I had an idea of what I wanted to do, but maybe I didn't have, the experience for the role that I, wanted. So throughout the years, I would push a lot to go for different job opportunities, and they wouldn't happen for me. So with one job that I did work for, I worked for them for about 9 years. And again, I can do the job great. I knew what I was doing, but I wasn't happy within that space. And they were having layoffs. And so I was affected by those layoffs. And I had someone that I really did not work with closely. After I was laid off for maybe a month, they reached out to me online and they invited me to have an interview with a job for a role that, again, ultimately I wasn't so interested in, but I accepted the opportunity anyway. And that was one of the best opportunities that I could have said yes to, even though the opportunity wasn't a job that I was interested in, but I could do the job. So I did accept it. I started working for this company, and I worked there for about 6 months in a role that I could do, but again, I didn't really enjoy. 6 months later, I got an opportunity to move into another role that I didn't know that I would really love so much. And that wound up being the role that I'm currently in and have been in for like the last 5 years. And I really enjoyed it. And I never knew how much I would enjoy it. However, if I didn't say yes to that invite, to that initial interview and an opportunity, I would not have gotten, that promotion and been able to move into something that I really do enjoy that I never would have looked at on my own. Like I never would have looked at it. I never would have went for it. I was going for things that I thought that I would be more interested in, and it never worked out. It never worked out in that way. And if it did, I wasn't happy. But when I got the invite from someone else and I said yes to it, ultimately that did work out and lead to something that I enjoy. So that is just another example of sometimes you don't know if you should say yes to something or not, but sometimes if you do take that leap of faith, it will ultimately, lead you to that right place where you should be. Another example that we've talked about on a personal note is how I decided that I wanted a new vehicle, and not because anything was wrong with the vehicle that I had, but it was how I was feeling at the time, and it was around my birthday, and I just wanted to get a new vehicle for myself just because that's what I wanted to do. And so sometimes when you're in a situation,
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to ask you real quick. Did anybody like around you suggest that you get a new vehicle, or you just decided to in that moment?
so in that moment, in that situation, no one suggested that I get a new vehicle. In the past, I've had someone say, "Oh, maybe you should get a new vehicle, or maybe you need a vehicle of your own," and that worked out.
Okay.
Someone
So there was
suggesting.
no invite from anybody in that situation.
No, in
Okay.
that particular situation, I just wanted it for myself
Okay. Yeah.
because I was feeling like I deserved to have a
Yeah.
new vehicle. And I was feeling, maybe down a little at that time, or something was going on where I just thought that that would make me feel better, that would uplift me, even though I didn't really need it.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Yeah. So when I did that, I was in the car dealership for a full day, pretty much 6 to 8 hours, which is not normal for you to be in a car dealership for 6 to 8 hours going back and forth about things that you want in a vehicle that is not baseline, or it's just not there. So sometimes when you have that struggle, it's an internal struggle. You should walk away. It's probably not right, but you still move forward with it. So I did ultimately move forward with it. I traded in a vehicle that I did have, got something newer, but ultimately, one, it didn't make me feel any better. Two, the vehicle was not as nice as the vehicle that I had previously with certain upgrades that I had done to that vehicle. And so maybe a year later, I wound up, getting rid of that vehicle for something else that was older, which probably doesn't make sense to a lot of people, but that was the decision that I had to make at that time because I jumped ahead into doing something that I thought that I felt, in that moment was right. And again, it wasn't, or turned out not to be the right decision ultimately for me at that time.
Yeah, so two things I was thinking about when you were talking. The first one is like, well, my mom doesn't have like a real inner authority. So other projectors, like most of you, will have emotional or splenic authority. And so, because she doesn't have an inner authority, it can be a little bit more challenging for her to figure out what she's supposed to do, how to make decisions. But also, like projectors, I've realized just talking to different projectors, is like one invitation always leads to the next. So, like, an invite can lead to something that you actually want to get to. It's all about like integration for projectors. It's never just like a one and done thing. It's always like consider everything you go to just one step up from the next thing. It's always taking you to where you're really supposed to be. So I think it's important not to get too caught up on the invitations themselves, and having a very strong sense of self and knowing that the invitation doesn't mean anything for your self-worth or like what you're trying to initiate, what you're trying to do. It's less about like what you have, and that's why it's so important for you to spend more time developing your skills, working on yourself, recognizing yourself, versus just waiting for invitations your whole life, waiting to be seen, waiting to be heard. It's like you have to really, really develop self sufficiency, more than like it'll be more so like invitations can take you by surprise and you're not so desperate for them. You're not actively searching for them because you're so self-absorbed. I think it's like in a good way, like being selfish can be good, and I think projectors need to become more self-absorbed in themselves. Like they're very confident in their solitude, in themselves, in what they can do, and so an invitation should just be icing on the cake. It shouldn't be, you know, the whole dessert. You agree with that?
Yes, I definitely agree. And I also feel like sometimes you're guided in a way that you will know that it's the right thing for you to do, even if it's not a clear invitation. So, an example of that would be when I was looking to buy a home and I was going out with a realtor, going to all of these different houses. I knew what I wanted in my mind. I knew the things that I wanted and the things that were non-negotiables for me, and I wasn't finding that at all going out, with a realtor. And so you can get discouraged and think, okay, it's not going to happen, or, you know, you can just get down about it. But if you're guided to something, because I was then guided to something or somewhere, and it had nothing to do with that realtor or a physical person, but I was guided to some place, and that was the place that I was supposed to be guided to. That was where I was supposed to, live, and that was everything that I wanted, and I was guided to it, but not by actually a physical person or a actual invite. So sometimes if you are guided to something or somewhere, that could be the thing, or that could be it. You don't know that, but sometimes you feel it, and it's not someone actually reaching out and saying, I invite you to this, or do you want to do this, or is this the right thing for you? It comes to you in a way that you just know it's right, and that is it. And you can go with that as well, not always just a actual physical invite or verbal invite or personal invite. It could be in another way. So also look out for those opportunities as well. And don't think that, you have to wait for someone to actually, say, you know, I want you to do this, or can you do that, or is this right for you? It can come in different ways as well. So I hope that that was another helpful example.
Well, before you give it to me, like, can you like kind of explain what you mean, like an example of another example, like?
So when I say that, I mean, like, if you are, let's say you're on the internet, right? And you're looking for something specific and something pops up. You didn't search it, you didn't physically go to that website. However, it popped up and you're like, "Oh, what is this about?" And you click on it and you do see that there's something there that might be of interest to you. You can follow up on that
Yeah,
as
yeah, yeah,
well.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that's what I mean by it doesn't have to be, a physical person or something so obvious. It could be something less obvious, and it could still become the right opportunity for you if you act on it in that way.
Okay. Yeah, so that's very similar to like generators. That's how I get a lot of my responses. That's how I found tarot. That's how I found human design. It just popped up. I wasn't looking for it, and I was like, oh, this is interesting. I'm going to start looking into that. Nobody like you guys invited me to move to the next level in that. So it's like very similar. Projectors and generators are very similar in the ways in which something can come out of nowhere for your next inspiration, your next job, your next idea, your next move. Like you'll get some type of hit intuitively, or something that just kind of falls into your lap. And then like you can explore that. Like you don't have to wait for anybody to tell you, oh, explore that. The invitation part more for projectors is mostly about those bigger things, like big relocations, move, entering into relationships. But if you find something that fascinates you or piques your interest, you can explore it because you're not imposing on anybody else's space. Invitations are more so like when you're trying to kind of like, impose on something or somebody else, or take something to the next level when you haven't been acknowledged to do so yet. So there's like a lot of gray areas with it, and it can be a little confusing. But I think that's a good way to discern like what are like invitations you need to be waiting for versus like certain things you can just do on your own, because a lot of what you're supposed to do is on your own. Like you're supposed to be studying on your own, like developing your own skills, doing whatever interests you. You can live your life to the fullest. It's just a matter of like when you're trying to really push, you're not supposed to push yourself into new spaces, new relationships. It has to be very organic. It cannot be pushy whatsoever. So I think that was good. And then I think the last things I want to know is like, you can give two, like, can you think of another example of when like an invitation went right for you, really well for you? And then can you think of a time where you actually self-sabotaged the invitations that you wanted? So two opposite things.
Yeah. So the self-sabotaging invitations, I've done that several times. And again, I don't know now if those would have been right or not for me, but I've had a couple of instances where in my, hobbies and things like that, that I would do like personal styling for people, or I wanted to get into that more. And I would, you know, maybe get invited to something that didn't have anything to do with that, but I would meet people at those other things that I would attend. So I could get invited to, a party for a friend of mine, or I could get invited to something for work about, public speaking, that I'm there to do something different, and I meet someone and I start talking to them about, you know, my hobbies or things that I like to do on the side. And then they would invite me to work with them, in some way. And it would sound great to me and I would be excited about it. But then I would go home and think about it and then I wouldn't act on it. Or I would, just turn down the opportunity. And so in that way, I feel like it was self sabotaging because maybe I didn't feel as confident in that as I do in something else. So I would, say no to it or just not follow up with the person to actually take advantage of the opportunity. And, when I think back on it, sometimes I do have regrets about it. But then again, I also don't know if that would have been the right thing for me at the time. So again, I just think that it's about how you feel. Like again, your inner knowing can guide you as well to things. And sometimes it could just be fear based. And you just are afraid to do it. So again, if you are afraid, that still might not be the right time because sometimes you have to work on building up your confidence. You have to work on your skill so you do feel more confident in doing it when the opportunity comes. I got
That's why
this.
you have to use the waiting period to do that.
Yeah.
The waiting is meant for confidence building.
So I think I don't necessarily regret saying no or turning down those opportunities. I think it wasn't the right time or I just wasn't as ready as I thought I was. Because I enjoy something doesn't mean that I'm ready to
Take it to the next level.
take it to the next level, so that, in that way it was like I wanted those things so bad to happen for me and they were coming, they were coming.
They'll always
Yeah,
come.
the invitations were coming. So that's another thing I want to say to you all. Just know that, even if you do turn down something or you don't do it, don't feel, you know, regret about it or down about it. Just know that it probably wasn't the right time or you probably would have said yes. Even when I was way younger, there's things that I wanted to do in the entertainment industry, and I got approached and invited to, have a manager, an acting coach, someone that was gonna, guide me. And, my life went in a different direction at that time. And that individual that I met randomly who did want to work with me reached back out to me probably a year after meeting him and things kind of going different in my life. And he still asked me again if I wanted to do this. And because things had took a different direction in my life, I had my daughter and things like that, I just wasn't as interested anymore. So that could be another thing where, your life can change, really quickly and it could go in a whole different direction than you thought, it was going. And it could be the greatest thing that ever happened because my daughter is the greatest thing, to me in my life. So I'm glad that I did turn down those other opportunities and went with just, being a mom, raising my daughter, going to school, doing those things because I think that your life path is your life path and you will get there. But sometimes you can't rush the process or do it in the way you want to do it, but you will get there. So I just want to say, thank you to Bronx for having me, and I really enjoyed speaking with you all, giving some examples, and hopefully we do it again.
Yeah. Okay, so to wrap up, the last two things I want to say is like for projectors, remember that invitations are like the big game. And think of like all when you're not getting invited, that's all the time. Like if you're an athlete, right? You don't just like go into the big game having no training, no experience, no none of that. So if you're hoping to get invitations, you have to really be actively like working as if they're on the way because they are on the way. And if you're not, then when you get to the big game, when somebody extends the invite, you're going to be like, oh, I can't go. I can't go for that. You're going to have fears. You're going to have doubts because you weren't preparing. You have to always be in a place of preparing when you're waiting. You shouldn't look at it as like, oh, I'm doing nothing. I'm not, I'm just here. When is it coming? And then you get it, and it's like you're not even able to accept it. You can't embrace it. You're afraid of it. So really look at every invite as like this is game day. Like people seek out projectors because they feel like they are experts in their field, that they're masters of their craft. Like people look at you guys as like you know what you're talking about, what you're doing. And if you really don't, that imposter syndrome is going to really kick into high gear. But if you do know, then go forward and know that those are just fears, if it feels right for you. And then the last thing I was gonna say, I can't remember what the other thing was. Oh, also for projectors, you need to remember that invitations don't expire unless somebody literally uninvites you, and this is what gets projectors really messed up because they'll get invited to start a friendship, to pursue something, and then if they don't accept it, or if they do accept it, they'll think that the person needs to keep inviting them in. That is not true. Once you're in the relationship, once you're in the situation, you can navigate it the way that you want. You can reach out to the person. The main thing that should still be there is like the relationship gives you recognition that you're seeking, but you shouldn't be dependent upon that person to continue to like always invite you, always do this, always do that. So projectors will let relationships fall apart or wither away because they'll feel like, oh, well, I need to be invited again. I need, the person hasn't reached out. Should I reach out? Like, yes. Once you're in it, if the person has not cut you off verbally, if they haven't said anything different, as far as y'all are still cool, still act as if y'all are cool, just, take it at face value. And I think it will save you a lot of like confusion in relationships. If you have to ask where you stand, you can ask, but just know the invitation still is there. So don't like let it go to waste, once you are invited. So that's what we have here for you all. Thank you for listening to my first podcast on YouTube. And thank you, Ma, for being here and doing this kind of on a whim as we were talking. So I hope you all enjoy it and that it can help some projectors out there. Please comment, like, share, subscribe. Let me know your thoughts, how you related to this. And we'll hopefully do it again soon. I am at Tarot by Bronx on everything.